In the last couple of years, it's become more popular to say we live in a post-truth world. The idea is that we rely less and less on facts to shape our perspectives on the world around us. I'm sure many of you understand this. With our recent polar vortex, which drove the temperatures to record lows, we yet again heard cries from some that global warming is obviously a hoax since it's cold outside, overlooking the fact that the polar vortex being pushed into our area was triggered by warming in the Arctic. In an era where our president decries purveyors of information as fake news peddlers and enemies of the state, truth becomes even more important. As part of the Unitarian Universalist tradition, we value truth and we value the search for truth. The fourth principle of our faith is a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Truth matters to us. Yet research shows that many of us lie within the first few minutes of meeting a new person. And according to Pamela Meyer, author of the book Lie Spotting, studies show that we encounter anywhere from 10 to 200 lies a day. So maybe truth and lies aren't simple or clear concepts. Are lies always bad? Have lies become so prevalent that we need to wipe the slate clean and start over? So imagine a world without those 10 to 200 lies a day. Have any of you seen the movie called The Invention of Lying? It's several years old, so even if you had seen it, you may have forgotten it by now. It's set in an alternate world that's just like ours, only people don't lie. A man calls into work. "I'm not coming in today." "No, I'm not sick, I just hate working there." Or, "Your baby is so ugly, it's like a little rat." The writers of this movie see a world without lying as one where compassion gives way to blunt truth. When the main character, Mark, goes to pick up a woman for a date, she comments how disappointed she is in him. The waiter tries to pick her up in the middle of their date. This is a world where the absolute truth is told all the time. Which also means you don't have to worry that someone is deceiving you. You would know exactly where you stand with people. You would know without a doubt if a politician is in a racist picture because they will tell you. If someone tells you they are sorry or they have changed, you can believe them. In the course of the film, Mark is fired. When he goes to the bank to withdraw money to pay his rent, the system is down, so the teller asks him how much he wants to withdraw. Instead of saying 300, the amount that is actually in his account, he says 800. This is the first lie told in this world. So of course, the system comes back up at that moment, and instead of doubting him, the teller says, "Oh, there must be a computer error." She fixes it and gives him the money anyway. Mark has discovered he can lie. In this, he also accidentally invents religion, and the implications of that are a whole separate sermon. What do you think of this? Would the world be better without any lying? In the invention of lying, this was also a world without creativity, without fiction. Would that, too, be a worthy trade? There are some days when I think the answer is yes. But it's not the world we live in. There are many different reasons people lie. Sometimes we lie to avoid hurting another person's feelings. "Of course, that dress looks wonderful on you." Or, "This is just the gift I wanted." Other lies are to keep us from getting in trouble. "No, officer, I have no idea why you pulled me over." Some are to avoid something we fear, to control change in our lives. Still, others are intended to give advantage to one person over another, or even to cause harm. We've all told lies, deceived one another and ourselves. And it's interesting to note that it's not just human beings who are capable of lying. Robert Trivers, a professor at Rutgers, specializes in social evolution, conflict, and cooperation. He tells us that lying and learning to detect lies have been major factors in the evolution of intelligence. And the more intelligent a species or a person is, the better they can lie. How many of you have heard of Koko the gorilla? A few of you. Okay. Koko was born in captivity and lived most of her life in a California wildlife preserve. She learned a vocabulary of over 1,000 sign language words and loved cats. When she asked her trainers to have a cat as a pet, she was allowed to choose a kitten. Well, one day in a fit of bad temper, Koko ripped a sink out of her enclosure. When asked what happened to the sink, she said the cat did it. Even species much further from us in the evolutionary department learn to use deception, although less consciously. A certain caterpillar, when frightened, will raise up and flash a salmon pink body and snake eyes. A certain spider mimics the smell of female moths in order to attract prey. One type of moth keeps itself safe from bats by mimicking the sounds of moths that are toxic to the bats. And the list goes on. Admittedly, moth noise is much different from the lying we engage in. We know that lies have damaged relationships and harmed people in many ways. And yet we encounter up to 200 a day. Now, many of these are little white lies. They might be lies to preserve feelings or inflate ourselves when we meet a stranger, or even to protect our privacy. Do we think about those when we tell our children not to lie? Dr. Paul Spector states, context, content, and culture define the white lie. We have no problem understanding the difference between a stage actor and an imposter. We do not judge a magician or a poker player's intent to deceive as lying. No conscience is disrupted by lying in response to such questions as, do I look fat in these pants? The expression brutally honest makes sense to us. Fact-checking has become a routine practice after political speeches, a tacit acceptance of very public deception. We demonstrate remarkable flexibility in our relationship to the truth. So, is our society as opposed to lying as it claims to be? I'm not sure how that would work with our principles. A free and responsible search for truth and meaning, except when it doesn't quite fit our moral and political context. It's not quite as poetic. But seeking truth is more complex than ever lying. Lies have saved lives and ended wars. During World War II, Britain ran a massive deception campaign to convince the Germans that the D-Day invasion was going to be somewhere else. It included cardboard airplanes, inflatable tanks, double agents, and a massive rumor campaign. Even after the Normandy invasion, they worked to convince Germany that that was the distraction. The campaigns were incredibly successful and led to a major reduction in the forces the Allies had to fight when they landed on the beaches in Normandy. So what do we make of this? Were they right to lie? Do the ends justify the means? In our commitment to seeking truth, we have to acknowledge that there are no easy rules about lying. Thomas Merton says, "The world is wilder than that in all directions, more dangerous and bitter, more extravagant and bright. Life is never as easy as we'd like it to be." We actually begin using deception in infancy. Infants will fake cry, stop, look around to see who's coming, and start crying again. How many of you have seen this? Of course, infants are unable to get our attention other ways, so is this lying or getting our needs met? As children get older, however, their abilities get more complex. 1-year-olds learn to conceal. 2-year-olds bluff, although not well. 5-year-olds tell outright lies, although they not well. By the time we go to college, we lie to our parents in 1 of every 5 interactions. The average, I'm not saying anything about any of you, married couple lies to one another in 1 out of every 10 interactions. Now, it's important to remember that in research like this, lying includes very minor things like simply nodding in agreement when someone says another person is great, even if you don't think that person is great. And yet, for a species that deceives from infancy and several times a day, we're bad at detecting it. Research shows that we can figure out we are being lied to about 54% of the time. There are a number of ways we try to tell whether a person is lying to us, and much of it involves word choice and body language. But these methods are imperfect. And as technology shifts, we are using it increasingly in our social lives and interactions. We communicate by text as often and frequently, depending on your age, more often than we talk on the phone. Millions keep up with the lives of their friends and family on Facebook or write emails instead of letters. Is this digital communication making us even less trustworthy? Jeff Hancock, Associate Professor of Cognitive Science and Communication at Cornell, says that while it seems like it would be easy for us to lie to one another online, we actually tend to be relatively honest. In studies on lies in communication, they found email is our most honest form of communication. The least honest, the telephone. Studies of Facebook show that people are relatively honest about their personality on that platform. We're also more likely to be honest about our resume on LinkedIn than we are on a paper resume. Of course, there are frightening implications to this. How many of you have read comments on news articles and later regretted that? Yeah. Me too. And there are times when I have had to stop reading just to hold on to my faith in humanity. I guess I'm engaging in a bit of self-deception. When I avoid the comments, I can pretend that the ugliness isn't there. And it turns out that self-deception is a really important part of lying. Deceiving ourselves about the truth allows us to deceive others. Self-deception makes us better liars. The easy giveaways to lies disappear if the person believes what they're saying. Some of us are better at this than others. Studies show that pathological liars are incredibly good at self-deception. Makes you rethink some of those political speeches, doesn't it? They believe what they are saying, which helps them convince you. A University of Southern California study showed that pathological liars have more white matter in their brain. White matter allows people to make connections between different ideas, and it also seems to allow us to hold contradictory ideas. An increase in white matter may allow pathological liars to make fast connections between items that don't actually belong together. It also helps regulate emotion, which helps them be better at lying. Pathological liars have about 14% less gray matter than other people. Gray matter helps us control our impulse to lie. This is the part of our brain that is engaged when we're asked to make moral decisions. So there are physical differences in the brains of those who lie well and often, though it's actually not clear which came first, the brain differences or the lying habit. Reverend Bonnie DeLotte says, "Surely at this point in our evolution, we are intelligent enough that we can use our reasoning skills to mediate the selfish impulses of our reptile brains. Can we not cultivate empathy, altruism, and compassion in ourselves? Of course we can. And that would take a lot of effort and time. A much easier, cheaper strategy is simply to lie to ourselves about our actions. This truth, that it is easier to just give in to our impulses and lie to ourselves about what we're doing, plays out not only in our individual lives, but also in our life together. Author Robert Trivers points out how our collective self-deception that the Americas were discovered by Columbus has allowed us to turn away from the tragic consequences of our national treatment of others. Many wars and disasters are caused by the deceit of others that is ultimately rooted in self-deception. But it actually says something encouraging, that we are decent enough that we need to deceive ourselves in order to deceive other people. At our core, we understand that other people matter. And we understand that self-serving lying doesn't serve the truth. If we didn't know this, if we didn't know that other people matter, if we didn't realize that the needs of others matter, we wouldn't need to deceive ourselves in order to lie. We'd lie to get what we want without any hesitation. But the fact we're able to study our own behavior gives us an ability that cocoa doesn't have, an ability spiders and caterpillars and moths don't have. We can consider how we interact with one another, what that will do to our relationships. We can understand ideas and ideals that tell us we must stand against injustice, even when we are not directly experiencing it, even when we could benefit from it. And becoming aware of our own motivations, our own desires, becoming aware of the ways we deceive ourselves is a key part of being able to make different choices. The best way to do this is to think about our own actions and motivations critically. Trivers suggests prayer and meditation. As Unitarian Universalists, it's a part of our religious calling to search for truth. And in a post-truth world where lies rule the land and the very notion of truth is looked at with suspicion, it is our responsibility to work to change that balance. It will not serve us to become cynical, looking for lies around every corner. Ironically, there's evidence that the people best at recognizing when they're being deceived are the people who are most trusting of others. Being a loving and, yes, trusting member of a community may be an essential part of discerning both truth and lies. My beloved companions on the journey, truth is so very big, and it resists our urge to contain it. Yet we are a people called to seek it. And we call one another to speak truth with consciousness and compassion, honoring the inherent worth and dignity of all, recognizing how our lives are interconnected. Whether you tell a white lie to your partner or a stranger on the street, or tell the truth even when it's hard, may we be aware of what we're doing and why. And may we reflect on how it may we reflect on how it reflects our religious values. It all becomes a part of the story of humanity. And in the words of one of my favorite writers, Stephen Moffat, we're all stories in the end, so make it a good one, eh? Amen.